Episode 3 of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms is here, and this was easily the best episode of the season. The ending to this one marked the true tonal shift in the show, and the familiarity to House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones returned as the darkness and madness that we know the Targaryens for was brought to the surface. With the reveal of Egg's true identity being the very thing that shocked everybody at the puppet show, there being clues littered throughout the entirety of the episode. The fortune teller revealing what's going to eventually happen to both Duncan and Egg, and the fate of Dunk now being left down to the trial of 7. Let's take a look at this week's episode, break it down, and I'll share what I thought of it. Here is A Night of the Seven Kingdoms episode 3, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Egg's true identity. This episode felt like it was all about giving us a deeper look inside of Egg's mind, and not only bridging the connection between himself and Dunk closer together, but it was also about showing us just how different he was from the tyrant Aerion Targaryen. From the very first episode, we saw that Egg was on the run and was essentially hiding from something, but after meeting Dunk and seeing the kind-hearted nature that he had and the almost gentle giant that he was, he thought he'd found his purpose as a squire. This was something that he was still hoping he'd be able to become following the tourney that Sir Duncan the Tall was going to be participating in. Now, within this episode, I also felt like there was a focus on eyes. Aerion had cold ones that almost looked through the people that he was focused on, whereas Egg saw what was directly in front of him. This was present in the opening scene where Sir Dunk was asleep and Egg was staring at him, wanting to begin the day and prepare thunder so that Dunk stood the best chance possible. We also saw that he treated Thunder with respect, something that Aerion didn't do when it came to him participating in the joust. Aerion saw the horse as an easy target and deliberately killed it so that it'd be victorious, so the horse was essentially an innocent victim in all of this. Aerion showed it no respect, the opposite to what Dunk does, and we also saw this in the previous episode when Aerion got off of his horse and it was spooked, and Dunk was able to calm it down. Egg said how he was always told that horses were dumber than dogs and only understood crops, but Egg didn't think that was true and believed that a horse didn't want to be ordered around any more than what a man did. This is why Egg, like Dunk, showed horses respect and why Aerion didn't, because it bridged the gap between both sides even more. When Egg and Dunk were confiding in one another and sitting overlooking Ashford, Egg mentioned how he'd be happy in a place like that, having land, animals, and living a peaceful life. This connected back to the fact that he was hiding from something, and it was only at the end of the episode when he called Sir Duncan and Sir Dunk protected Tansel where Egg revealed who he truly was. To stop Sir Dunk having his teeth knocked out, Egg revealed himself to be the brother of Aerion Targaryen. He didn't have blonde hair because he cut it off as he didn't want to be like his brother and wanted to distance himself from the family because he felt extremely different to them. This finally provided the backstory and understanding to Egg and why it is that he was so fearful when he saw the Targaryen banner in episode 2, but also why he was saying things like kill him to the opposition that was up against Aerion during the tourney, because he actually wanted him dead as he didn't care for his brother. And it also showed why he understood that he was certain that he killed the horse on purpose and that he cheated, because he knows the type of evil person that his brother is as he grew up with him. Dunk didn't think that it was a mishap, or at least, if he did, he didn't want to speak wrongly of the prince out in the open. There were moments where it was hinted that Egg could have been a Targaryen, especially towards the end of the episode. When Dunk and Raymond Fossaway were sipping on some cider in the tent, after Raymond mentioned about how the Targaryens were tyrants, he spoke of how Maekar had left Ashford in search of his heir and also his youngest son. When Raymond said his youngest, it cut to Egg running in before he could finish his sentence, which was definitely alluding to it being him. It was literally moments before the climax of the episode where Egg said to Dunk that he didn't know his father, when in reality he knew all along, it was Maekar. So I wonder if Dunk is going to feel betrayed by Egg due to the fact that he thought that he could trust him, when in reality, everything that he actually knew of him was a lie. Egg was Aegon Targaryen V, not just a random orphan boy that he picked up at the stables. Sir Duncan the Tall's nobility. One thing that cut through in this episode was Sir Duncan's nobility and the fact that he truly does believe in knights representing the good and their responsibility in protecting the people. Even though Sir Duncan would be firm with Egg with the way that he'd speak with him, we did see a softer side to him and there almost being this brotherly protection that was there. We saw this when Dunk was teaching Egg how to brush the horse and also when he made him breakfast. This actually provides a great contrast to the lack of a brotherly relationship and the lack of a caring nature that Egg has with his biological brother, Aerion Targaryen. Egg stopped Dunk from being harmed, whereas Egg wanted harm to come towards his brother in the joust. We saw Duncan's nobility on 2 occasions during this episode. The first was when he was taken on a walk by the Master of Games and he was asked by him to essentially beat Lord Ashford's son in a tourney deliberately. Lord Ashford's son was essentially going to take the fall on purpose, which meant that the game was basically rigged. This was something that Dunk didn't want. He believed that it would tarnish his image of what it meant for somebody to be not only a champion, but also a knight. Dunk was originally concerned that he'd lose the joust that he'd be participating in, but by having a victory just handed to him, it was something that he didn't want in the slightest. He wants a victory that he's actually earned, and when he said that, the Master of Games said to him, "Have you not earned it?" This was alluding to the hard work that Dunk has done throughout his life in being a squire and that the opportunity to become a knight was quite literally being handed to him. But as we saw, nobility, truth and honor is something that's more valuable to him. This nobility was something that also came across during the ending of the episode when he laid his hands on Aerion Targaryen. In the previous episode, it was shown to us that Dunk became a blubbering fool around Tanelle and that he was basically besotted with her. During this episode, Tanelle put on a show with her puppets, but it showed a knight slaying a dragon, which was essentially slander to House Targaryen. With Aerion watching on, he wasn't happy with what he saw, so he kicked off and broke one of her fingers. This led Dunk to want to rescue the fair maiden, and he fought off Aerion so that she was safe. There was a harrowing moment where there was this stillness in the air as Aerion said, "Why did you throw your life away for this woman?" And even though he couldn't see it, we all could. It basically showed that these entire 3 episodes had essentially been building up to the point of us seeing that being a knight isn't about having your sword and shield, and that it's more so about being a noble and honorable man. That's exactly what Dunk did in this instance. He stood up for what was right and fought off what he believed was wrong. The fortune teller's predictions. This section is going to contain spoilers from the novel, so if you don't want to hear it, then skip ahead to the timestamp on screen. Okay, let's go. Partway through this episode, there was a small moment with a fortune teller which only lasted a few seconds, but it quite literally alluded to the fate that was on the horizon for the 2 main characters. For Egg, the fortune teller said, "You shall be king, die in a hot fire, and worms shall feast upon your ashes, and all who know you shall rejoice in your dying." With Egg being revealed to be King Aegon V, the fortune teller's predictions made sense, but let's dive into what she truly meant. When she said that he'd be king, this is something that does actually go on to happen. With all of the heirs pretty much dying before him, that ultimately leads Egg to sit on the Iron Throne. Nobody ever thought that the lineage would lead to Egg, especially seeing as though he had 3 other brothers with them having children as well. Then when it was mentioned that he'd die in a fire and people would rejoice in him dying, it's difficult to see right now why people would rejoice in Egg's death, especially seeing how kind of a person he is during the present day, but some people actually do. Egg ultimately died in his palace at Summerhall. When Egg tries a ritual to hatch dragon eggs, it all goes wrong and the palace gets engulfed in flames, which ultimately leads to his death. He wanted to bring dragons back into the world, but it ultimately cost him his life. When it comes to people rejoicing in his death, it wasn't specifically the small folk. The joy came from the lords. Egg's reign was seen as one that was inconvenient and like it should never have really happened. During his time as king, he was pushing reforms that reduced noble power and was more on the side of the small folk, so those in power were inevitably disappointed with what he was trying to do. The small folk were seen to be mournful though, because they finally had a ruler that lived amongst them for a short while and that had their best interests at heart. When it came to Dunk's fortune, they said to him, "You shall know great success and be richer than a Lannister." This is something that does also turn out to be true. With Egg becoming king, Dunk ultimately goes from being a hedge knight all the way to becoming Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. This is a role that comes with status, land, armor, and an amount of wealth too. However, it's a wealth that far outvalues the coin that fills his pocket and food in his belly. This is the status, legacy, and memory that's born with his death. Due to him being an honourable man and siding with what he believed was morally right, people remember him for having respect, honour, and as one of the greatest knights in history. So wealthier than a Lannister is something that he definitely becomes. My review of the episode. I thought this was the best episode of the season so far. I feel the tonal shift that we got at the end really marked the turning points in the show, and after now seeing the trailer for episode 4, it looks like the light-hearted fable-esque nature of it is going to draw to a close, and the epic battles and darkness that we're used to seeing in the show is going to be brought to the forefront. Don't get me wrong, I've loved the softer tone that's been present, but that cold stare that Aerion had and the confidence that he had when he said, "The dragon never loses." It's something that just cut through and was almost like a welcome home from the show. One thing that this show continues to impress me with is how it's made episodes that are literally about 25 minutes feel so impactful and meaningful, and it doesn't feel like any part of the story has been compromised whatsoever. It's written in a way where the story isn't complex in the slightest, but the weight behind it really does carry. It's a simple story about good versus evil and right versus wrong, and we see it embedded throughout many of the different characters. The scene that I absolutely loved in this episode was the ending where we saw Sir Dunk protecting Tanelle. I've wanted to see how well he could throw hands since he was first on screen, and with it literally needing several nights to hold him back, it showed just how strong and powerful he actually was. The subtle moments throughout this episode, with Egg wanting Aerion to be killed and also knowing full well that he cheated during the tourney, felt all the more powerful at the end when it was revealed that he was actually his brother. They revealed it in a cool way, and when Egg started referring to the knights by their names and telling them to stop, the confidence that we've seen him have throughout the entirety of the show so far just made complete sense. What I think this show does really well that House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones probably falls short on is it manages to tap into the human side and gives a sense of relatability. The relationship that both Duncan and Egg have with one another is infectious to watch, and you see yourself not only within the way that they act, but also standing alongside them. They stand for what's right, and rarely in Game of Thrones is it as black and white as that, so it's refreshing to see. With it looking like Sir Duncan the Tall is going to be facing some real big issues in the next episode and the Trial of Seven being brought to him as punishment, I feel we're going to see the Hedge Knight truly begin to show what it's like to be a knight very soon. So, there you have it, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms Episode 3 Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos on A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, then check the playlist below, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future videos. What did you think of this episode? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video, and I'll see you in the next one.